is up, guys? Stu here. So earlier this week I was lucky enough to get my booty over to an advanced screening of The Lost City of Z. So let's talk about that shit. So The Lost City of Z is a film which sort of crept up on me. I didn't really know a huge amount about it going into the new year, other than people had seen it last year at film festivals and were like, yeah, hey, it's pretty good, you should check it out. But then more people started seeing it and were like, yeah, it is actually... The other people weren't lying, it's good, you should check it out. I mean, people were really praising this one. I'm pretty sure Robbie Cullen called it an instant classic. So, you call a film an instant classic, you best believe I'm gonna go check that shit out. And honestly, after seeing it, I really do feel like I've watched a different film to a lot of critics. So if you haven't heard about it, The Lost City of Z is basically a big kind of explorer epic telling the true story of James Fawcett, who was an explorer in 1920s Britain who was obsessed with finding this ancient civilization called the Lost City of Z. So the film is a big, long telling of his story of how he got so invested in the Lost City of Z in the first place and everything around that. And it is a really fascinating true story. He is kind of like the OG Indiana Jones, if you want to call him the OG Indiana Jones. You probably shouldn't call him the OG Indiana Jones. I shouldn't have called him that. We'll just move on. We'll move on with that. We'll forget that happened. So the film stars as James Fawcett, this explorer, Charlie Hunnam, and this is where I think the film immediately begins to trip up on itself, because who in their right mind thought Charlie Hunnam was good enough to carry a 2.5 hour long epic? Really? Who? To be fair to him, the guy is trying and he is doing a pretty solid job in about 50% of this film. But the other 50%, it just comes off as... I don't know, really. There's something weirdly off about the way he approaches certain elements of the screenplay here. I think it's a weird overpronunciation of certain words. It kind of reminds me of Orlando Bloom, in where he's talking like this and he's kind of overpronunciating everything, and then I just don't believe everything he's saying at all because it's fucking Charlie Hunnam. But it's kind of soft. It's like someone almost doing an Orlando Bloom impression. That's the vibe I got from him in this film. Obviously not very good. Everyone else in the film is actually really solid. Sienna Miller is sort of his love interest, his wife in the film. She's fantastic with what she's got there. Again, she's a sort of character that just kind of pops up every now and then. Isn't 100% as fleshed out of everyone else, but when she is there, I enjoyed watching her, and I did enjoy her relationship with Charlie Hunnam, so she was great to see. And also, actually, Robert Pattinson is really great in the film as the kind of, you call him a sidekick of James Fawcett. Yeah, he was really surprisingly quite good, and honestly didn't feel like I was watching Robert Pattinson in a film. But again, I don't feel like he's in the film enough. He really isn't in the film enough, actually. Thinking about it, I wish there was more Robert Pattinson in this film, which is not something I ever thought I was going to be saying on camera, so... I think this film would have been better if they had replaced Charlie Hunnam with Robert Pattinson in this film. If they had swapped those two roles for those characters... that might have been a bit more interesting as a film. I actually think I would have enjoyed that more. So yeah, overall performances are undeniably solid, with the exception of Charlie Hunnam in the lead role, which, as you can imagine, is a little bit of a problem in a long 2.5 hour epic. And we'll come back to that in a little bit, because when your lead in a film is not good, you've got a problem on your hands. But there are actually some other things about the film I really enjoyed, namely from the side of the direction here from James Gray. There are moments where his direction is actually really interesting, but doesn't really go far enough to make me care about the stuff that's happening, if that makes much sense. I mean, it's a very classical film in its direction, in that it does feel like a very long, sweeping epic that we might have got in the days of classical Hollywood. As I said, there are moments which are a little bit more interesting, and you could define as a little bit more, I guess, arty, if you want to use that word. Particularly in the editing, actually. There are certain moments and sequences where it will cut between what's happening in the Amazon and back home in really interesting fashions, and those actually ended up provoking some interesting thoughts in myself and some interesting emotions. But as I said, they are really just glimpses within the film. They happen once or twice throughout and they never really go for it. But on the cinematography side of the direction, it is a very good looking film. I really did enjoy what was done here with the lights and with the colours in the film. I don't know, I just enjoy seeing people shoot rainforests in film. Odd thing to say, but I do. I like it when people can shoot rainforests in interesting and tasty looking fashion, and it makes my eyeballs go yum. Yes, give us some more of that. But the writing and story and screenplay is again where this film starts to slip a bit for me. I just think that for a near 2.5 hour long epic true story about an explorer getting sucked into finding something that he can't necessarily prove, it isn't as interesting as you'd hope. And that's not me saying, oh, it needs to be Indiana Jones and big things need to happen, they need to get attacked and chased. I don't mean that at all. I am very happy to see none of that stuff in an exploration film. Heck, look at Embrace of the Serpent, a film which is very slow and does not have any Indiana Jones stuff about someone exploring the Amazon. But that is incredibly interesting and captivating, and I was hoping for something along that lines here. It just didn't really ever happen for me. And I think it's because it's one of those cases of films which rattles through so much and tries to show so much in a timeline in someone's life that you never really feel like it takes enough time in certain moments. And when you get to the end of it, I just didn't really feel much for it. Like, I was incredibly interested to see a kind of in-depth character study about a guy who is so incredibly just set on finding something to the point where it might, I don't know, end up manipulating his life and ruining his home life. We never really get into that stuff. I think it's a film that tries to touch on that and definitely does do in the end, but just comes off as like, oh, well, it's just things happening, really. And I think that's also down to the fact that the director seems to just throw in certain character relationships and expect us to feel things that I don't personally feel watching this film. Main example of that being the relationship between James Fawcett and his son, who's played very well by Tom Holland in the film, might I add. But yeah, that ends up becoming quite a prominent theme at the end of the film, I think. And it's just so half-assed that I didn't ever really give a shit about any of that. The son pops up and is like, yo, I hate you, Dad. You suck. And then the next time we see him, he's like, yeah, you're good. This is all right, I guess. And then they have a weird kind of redemption arc, and I'm like, hold on. If this is the way you're trying to go here, we're going to need more than that. There's just so much clear potential for very interesting, deeper analysis of this character that never really happened. It's just Charlie Hunnam going through the film, and then it's like, yeah, well, that was that. And that brings me back to the fact that we have a terrible lead here. I'm sorry, Charlie Hunnam really was a bad pick for the lead in this film. He may work for some people, and that is absolutely fine. If you watch this film and you were like, Charlie Hunnam was great, I am jealous of you, I wish I felt that, but I just didn't. And I think that was one of the biggest reasons why I struggled to get into the film when it needs me to get into the film, because I was constantly being sucked right back out by the acting from Charlie Hunnam. And I also need to mention some quite honestly terrible aging of Charlie Hunnam in the final act of this film. I don't know what happened there. Like, Sienna Miller gets old in the film, and she looks like Sienna Miller got old. I'm like, yeah, I buy that she's got old, and we've moved on through the story. And then Charlie Hunnam walks in, and he's just got, like, wrinkles, but he's still got that slick back Charlie Hunnam hairstyle. He sounds the same, he looks the same, and I'm like, that's just fucking Charlie Hunnam with crow's feet on his eyes. He's not older at all. It's really fucking bad. Did they have two different makeup people for both Sienna Miller and Charlie Hunnam? Is that what happened there? Were they like, we'll give Sienna Miller the good makeup person, and then we'll give Charlie Hunnam fucking Dangerous Pete from the side of the street we found before we started shooting, and we'll see if he can do it. Like, let's just give him a chance. And then they came to the cutting room floor and they were like, oh wow, he really didn't make him look old. Do you think people will notice? Nah, leave him in. It's fine. Leave it in. Yeah, I don't know. I was really underwhelmed by The City of Z. It's really frustrating in that it's not necessarily a bad film, and there are definitely really great elements of it. I mean, there are really solid performances. The direction on the whole is good, but it seems to undermine itself at every opportunity it gets to become something bigger and greater. It is just a long film, which is interesting at points, and it's a fascinating true story, but the way it's told is just dull. I was honestly bored at points. And so for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and give Lost City of Z a very low, just scraping at 3 stars. It is probably the first film this year where I'm like, I genuinely don't care about this film. It really didn't actually do anything to me. I'm probably going to forget about it within a week. But what about you guys? Have you seen Lost City of Z? It comes out over here in the UK tomorrow, potentially today, depending on how well my internet decides to play ball. Whatever you thought about it, let me know in the comments below. I would love to know. And as usual, if you like this video and want to see me talk about more shit, go ahead and click subscribe. But until next time, stay beautiful, mother truckers.